Live it up, live it up, live it up, live it up.
Welcome to the Say Network podcast. I'm Jim Sparks, and I'm here with Megan Villalpando.
Hey, guys.
Abraham Guevara.
Hello.
And special guest, Kathy Lovin. Hello, Kathy.
Hello.
Kathy is from the building next door. We record in Building G. She's in Building D, so it's appropriately named because it's the building next door. I don't know where E and F are.
I don't think there are.
They're probably non-existent, but Kathy works in our Community Relations and Development Department and is the Public Affairs and Communications Director. How long have you been here at THQ?
17 years, and then 3 years before that at the then named Southern Cal Division.
Southern Cal Division.
Yeah.
So you got hired there.
Got hired there in 1999, May of 1999.
Nice.
God, that's a long darn time.
So she's worked at both at the territorial level and the divisional level and at the White House. I always like to put that one in there.
Well, that one didn't have a whole lot to do with the Salvation Army.
I know, but you worked in the White House.
I did.
How many years?
Oh, not long. At the very tail end of the Reagan administration. I was in college for most of the Reagan, well, not most of the Reagan administration, but the last part. And then when I was done, I went straight to Washington, and I think about a year and 4 months or something until it was over.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was good.
That's pretty cool. Did you live in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah.
Oh,
Lived in
cool.
DuPont Circle. Woo.
Is that part of your like tribe? Like, is that like, did you get jumped in like a fraternity or anything? The DuPont Circle gang?
Oh, wow. Gosh, no.
You're not.
No, it wasn't
there's no
that
way.
interesting. No, sorry.
We love Kathy in the youth
Thanks.
department, and she's been voted the most awesome person 3 years in a row.
Have I?
Yeah.
Where's my prize? Where's
Well,
my
this is
cash
the first
award?
time we've actually told her. But your name, if it ever comes up, it's always very pleasantly talked about.
Oh, gosh.
Yes.
That's sweet.
Kathy rescues many a cats.
I do.
How many cats would you estimate you rescue in a year?
Well, I've had to slow the pace right now because the census is kind of high at my house and I have nowhere to put anybody else. So, but most years, and I'm not doing it by myself. I'm just, I'm, although this last year it was a solo effort and I got 4 cats from a lady who was getting evicted because she had, too many cats.
Yeah.
Great. So now I have too many cats. And so they weren't backed by a rescue group. So I have to figure out everything. And so 2 of them have found homes and 2 of them haven't. So that census, in other words, is just too high for me to say yes to anybody else. But most years I probably have a good 10 cats through my doors from fostering to adoption.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I just realized that our guests back to back are severe cat lovers. And
It's true.
It's kind of a trend.
Who's the next guest?
We had Dave earlier, Withoff.
Dave Withoff. Oh,
Yeah.
Withoff. Did I say it wrong?
Withoff.
He's a cat guy,
He is very much a cat guy.
but he's a one cat guy.
Yeah. He's monogamous.
Yeah.
And does that work for that?
You might want to cut that part out.
Kathy, I remember you mentioning you had a cat condo.
Yeah.
What is a cat condo?
Well, I
It's
have
not attached to anything else.
I do have a cat condo, and that mostly just means a little indoor structure that they can play in. But I also have a catio, like patio, but with a C.
Okay, that's awesome.
That's what we call it when you basically close in your patio or a portion of your yard.
Oh, I
So I
see.
have a little flap, and the guys go outside, and there's the side yard is basically covered and walled, so it's theirs, and they can be outdoors. And when it was first built, it was pretty nice. And so I had a friend who was like, I don't know, things aren't going well. I might lose my job. Can I live in the catio? And I felt that perhaps maybe I'd over-rotated on the catio. Maybe I made it a little
Too nice.
Maybe.
That's pretty funny. Catio.
Catio. It's awesome.
It's a word.
Well, that's a good segue from cats to Service Corps, and then to talking about the moves today. Megan,
There are moves today?
no,
Oh,
there might be. I don't know.
who knows?
We never know.
We never know.
That's true.
Hence the topic.
So yeah, Service Corps. I just want to take a minute. By the time this episode airs, we will have launched our Service Corps application for Service Corps 2020. And we have some really, really, really cool locations in the works. And definitely, if you or somebody you know could benefit from Service Corps, has a desire to serve, I would highly, highly encourage them just to check out our website. You can go to servicecorpswest.com and learn all about Service Corps, what we do, what past teams have done, and figure out if that's something that maybe, you might have a desire to do. Again, it's all about service and being in community with one another, coming into another culture, and just coming alongside and supporting the existing work that the Army is doing there, and just being a support and an encouragement. And it's such a great experience. I talk about my experience 10 plus years ago, all the time. And it's great. And I highly recommend it, not just because it's my job to promote it, but also because I just think it's great. Our application deadline is going to be February 1st. So there's plenty of time to apply. And then also at some point in 2020, we will be announcing a 2-week trip as well. So just stay tuned on our website for more information about that. But again, we've got some great locations, wonderful people involved with the Salvation Army. And you definitely don't want to miss out if you want to just get out of your comfort zone and serve and see what the Salvation Army is like around the world. I highly, highly encourage you to apply for Service Corps or share the information with somebody who might be interested.
How old do you have to be?
Good question. So you have to be at least 18 and you can be up to 28. There's a little bit of flexibility on the upper end of the age. You also need to be a senior soldier at your corps by the time you go on Service Corps. So, maybe you're thinking about Service Corps, but maybe you're in the process of taking soldiership classes when you apply. That's okay. As long as you are enrolled as a senior soldier before orientation, that's fine.
How long? How many weeks?
Yeah, so Service Corps, we do a 1-week orientation in June at Camp Craig's, and then it's about 6 weeks. And then we come back to Camp Redwood Glen for a debriefing at the end of the summer. So in total, it's probably about 7 weeks.
Sweet. Sign up. Follow the link. It'll be in the show notes. Show notes.
Can I say it too? Show notes.
Yeah, it doesn't feel good.
It's fine. It's a good word.
It does feel good.
Good hybrid word.
Show enough.
Yeah.
All right, moves. Moves in the Salvation Army generally happen announced in May, but there are periodical moves that happen. We call those mid-season moves, like in sports terms. Those happen here and there. There's no predictability of those at all. But one thing that is predictable is the moves that happen in June, and that's roughly around 10% or less of our moves happen. Salvation Army officers move during that. And so we're going to talk as kind of employees and soldiers of what it's like to be on that end. We did a podcast that we'll link to in here from the officer's perspective.
And also a soldier's perspective to some extent. We had a pretty good variety and it was well reviewed.
Yeah, and so we're going to talk about what it's like to be employees and sometimes what it's like to be a soldier with these moves. When do you guys all start thinking about the moves of because we all work for an officer ultimately and multiple officers ultimately. When do you start thinking about it?
Right around June.
June. Well, you're way too late. June after they've announced May, or
no,
you know that they announced those of May
when the email comes out.
Oh, okay.
Just kidding.
I think for me, I start thinking about it kind of like January, February. Sometimes it kind of depends on the officer. Some are a little more vocal. I think I'm going to move. I think I'm going to move next year. So then usually that's like the sign to when I start thinking about it. But in terms of as an employee, I would say probably like January, February.
Yeah, I'm around there February. Start wondering. You start looking for little hints.
Yeah. Are they packing up their office?
Yeah. Are they very solemn, walking around quietly?
Has we used to always joke if Colonel Hudson would come down and talk with our officer.
Yeah.
Was that a sign?
A lot of consoling going on, pre-consoling?
If the chief would come down, if the personnel secretary would come down.
I remember being at a conference and we kind of felt like the CRD secretary at that time was going to get moved. We weren't sure, but we were at a disaster conference. And I remember he took out the office credit card and bought everyone these expensive, like fleece, Salvation Army shield jackets. And we were like, oh, wow, that was his last hurrah. He's run the credit card for the last time. And we were right. And we were basically right.
That's very
That was
funny.
our parting gift, or his parting gift.
When do you start thinking about it?
I think about it a lot, and I'll tell you why. One of the things that I'm focused in on for the Army is the narrative and making sure we're always ready to talk about things to the news media, especially the hard things. And I teach the cadets. My boss and I, Deb Knutson, and I teach the cadets. And so I have a running sort of wish list in my head of where I hope people go based on the difficult things that might be going on in that community. So I think about it all the time and think, oh, that would be a good move. Oh, maybe they'll put so-and-so over here because, boy, that would open up. That would be good,
Yeah.
So I kind of think about it a lot. Sometimes it's just recreational that we're sort of, we know it's a serious topic, but we kind of, think about it and try and have a little bit of fun with it. But it's a serious thing
Like
for
fantasy
us too.
football.
A
Kinda
little bit
fantasy,
like that.
Like move.
Kind of, a little bit like that. Very little.
It's a sore
Like
subject
that,
for me
but yeah.
today,
Yeah.
this week.
Yeah, it's tough because you could fall into that trap of thinking of it like fantasy
Yeah.
football, but it's real people's lives
it's
and
real.
stuff like that. And I think my tune has changed over the years of how I've thought about it, because I'm like, it's actual people's lives that are changing, and it's a radical change.
Absolutely.
And if any of us have, if you just moving a house or apartment or stuff like that is a major deal, imagine having the odds of having to do that maybe every year or every couple of years it's really kind of scary.
The uncertainty as an officer, or not,
Yeah.
probably even part of the officer's family, like myself.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think I would say my sensitivity over this has grown dramatically over the years, as I've had a family, and
Yeah.
like, what would it be like if someone just said, hey,
Oh, yeah.
you got to leave, and then, but you're still, maybe you're doing what you really love and they got to pull you away. It's a lot. I think for me, I think about it, year round, but I don't think about it how I used to. I think I used to be like, well, they're probably going to go here, they're probably going to go here, they're probably going to go here, and trying to be Mr. Predictable. But I think more of less of like, how is this going to shape our culture and different moves? And I think of it more than that. Like, if we lost this person, how is that going to change the culture in which we're working in? And so that's constantly like on my mind of what it is, because sometimes you want to preserve it, and sometimes you're like, all right, I think we're good. We've been together for a long time, and
Sure.
it's a natural separation. But I think about it a lot. Does it affect your work? Do the moves affect your work, knowing that it's coming up?
No, they don't affect my work really. I mean, I can't let it affect my work, because I think that no matter who's sitting in the desk down the hall, my job, the details of my job might change a little bit based on their priorities, but my job really still is to equip the field and mentor the field and to train and hopefully model certain things for the field. So I really can't let anything get in the way of that. So no, I don't think so. I don't think so. It doesn't really.
Yeah, that's interesting,
affect.
because I think from a program standpoint, it might affect us more, because we're looking at things,
Yeah, sure.
down the line and saying, okay, if we've planned all this, if we get a new person coming in, is that going to halt everything that we've just worked on? Or is it just going to make it, we got to do even more on top of that? And so I think for me, at least, it does change my work stuff. I bet if you looked at my work cycle over the years, probably around late March to April is usually like really light, because I'm like, I don't want to make any decisions or try to pitch anything until I find out if that person is here or gone, because that would change it. And so as I was writing these questions, I was thinking like, I wonder if you looked at where my proposals are, I bet you a lot of them fall in June, because like everyone stayed, hey, let's try this. But so it for me, it changes a lot.
I don't know if I think I kind of changed my approach when a new officer comes in. I'm always thinking about just, just bearing in mind that whatever I'm working on, I've been working on for a while. I have the full context. I know all about that thing, but just trying to be mindful that that new addition to the team, that new officer coming in doesn't know about it, you know? Yeah. And so I always just kind of try to prepare myself just knowing that, you know, my work might slow down a little bit or that type of thing, just because I'm going to need to kind of give them just a crash course on what I'm doing, what I'm working on, give them some information so that they can make an informed decision if they need to approve something that I'm doing or that type of thing. Yeah. So just extending some grace to them and being okay with it, because I'm definitely like I like to always be working on something, moving forward, doing whatever, but recognizing that it's okay for that to slow down in order to integrate, you know, the new officer, the new boss.
Yeah. I think it does give you a time to kind of reevaluate what you're doing, a little bit of the stuff you're working on, because then you're just like, I'm going to have to explain this to somebody. And you're kind of like, as you're doing that evaluation, you're like, oh, I don't know if this is as important as I thought it was or whatever. But yeah, it's kind of a chance to reset a little bit, or to like step back and kind of, you know, look, because you're going to have to like, you know, step in the office and say, then what do you do? And like, here's what I do. Here are the things I work on. And so I think it does give you a chance to kind of do even some pruning sometimes. Yeah. You know? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know, the last couple of years I've noticed that I've like prepared, like, because there was only one time in my working career for the Salvation Army where I was just completely surprised that our boss got moved. I think I found out the day before, and just surprised. And they were only there for 2 years, and it took me a while to kind of cope with that. Not like emotionally, I was distraught or anything, but I was like, holy smokes, we just had all this stuff going. I didn't even prepare for all of this, and you're only given like 6 weeks to really kind of sew everything up. And I realized at that time that closure is also very important when you're working for an officer, of like, they're going to be leaving up this thing and they want to go somewhere and they want to know that it's secure when they left. And I recognize that more now, that you would want to kind of prepare for that closure, like when that's happening, of, all right, we're wrapping this up, and giving them the assurance that we're going to keep going on these things. You know, it's beyond them as well. But that's changed for me over the last couple of years, just because of the abruptness of it. And I think the weird part is being at a headquarters. It's not crazy to think that a mid-season move for like one of our officers to happen, like if they go overseas or something like that. So yeah, you always have to kind of have that in the back of your head.
Right.
So if you get a new boss or a new corps officer, a new leader, are there maybe some things that you shouldn't do when that new boss comes in? We talked about some things that how it affects us, but are there some things that maybe we should avoid doing?
Yes.
There's so many things.
Yeah. I think, again, the most important thing we need to recognize is that our lives are going to change a little bit. Their lives are changing a great deal. They're going to a new place. They're going to new community. If they have kids, then their kids are going to a different thing and different school. And there's a lot more emotion on their end than on our end, because we're secure. We're here. We've got a place. And so I think being insensitive to that and treating it like as just kind of like just a fantasy type thing, you know, is dangerous, and lack of sensitivity could make that 6 weeks a very, very difficult time.
Well, and they haven't asked
to
come to our department. They've been assigned to come and contribute in our department, and so we have to do everything we can to make them comfortable, but also make them successful.
Yep.
And I think acting like it's no big deal is not the thing to do. It is a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal for them. It's, like you said, not that big of a deal for us, because we're going to probably be doing the same thing today as we do tomorrow. But yeah, it's a very big deal for them. It's a learning curve, and we do, like Megan said, we have to slow down to let them, you know, get on the hamster wheel with us.
Yeah, it's weird to think about that. You're getting on you're getting a new job. Someone's giving you a new job to go in, and everyone that works either for you or around you knows more than what you know going into it.
Right.
That's
There's no formal, real formalized training going into
it's just
the job.
weird. It's just a weird thing. So
a brief this thick, or whatever.
Which I don't think you received till the day you arrive. Yeah.
Good luck.
yeah. So it's there's a lot of challenges, and so I think sensitivity needs to be at its highest point in the department, and I think making light of the fact that they were moved is very dangerous to do during that time.
I was like, don't assume they know your culture. Don't, like we had this conversation earlier, but don't assume they know the culture of the workplace, of the department.
Yeah.
So you have somebody there that you can actually help, and you can teach them, and just be sensitive to whatever it is that they need to know. There's all these protocols that they are not aware of, so don't assume if something comes up missing. Show a little bit of grace. It's just like if
furniture. What do you mean?
Yeah, furniture goes missing, if lamps take off. But yeah, no, like if they don't put certain things in on time, or just like things that your last boss did. Also, don't tell them how the last boss did things.
We always did it this way.
Yeah.
There is an exception to that. Is when we had Major Ivan Wild leave and his brother replaced him. We did a lot of that.
But you also used the same welcome poster. I remember this, where you just crossed out the names and added the new first names.
Speaking of insensitive, yes. So we did. We used the same welcome poster that for Major Ivan Wild that we did for Roy, but we just crossed out the names. And but yeah, we broke that rule for them, and looking back, probably didn't need to break that rule.
Yeah.
I would often say, Ivan would have approved this. I'd be like, oh, fine.
Yeah.
I think the same with just carrying expectations over, particularly if it's your first officer change or first time you've had a new boss sort of rotate in. It's so tempting to be like, oh, well, so-and-so always did it this way or that way, or, like Kathy was saying, we always do it this way. Go in knowing that your culture is going to change for the better too. Not that the last boss had a bad culture or anything like that, but the new boss can contribute something new, something different, something to your department as well, and to your team ultimately.
Yeah.
Well, as part of the ministry, we have to believe too that God has placed them there for a very strong reason, and so we want to find what that is. And support them however we can.
Right. How have you seen officer transitions work well in the workplace? Like, how have you seen, oh man, this was actually a really great moment. This move was actually really great. It's not that the last guy was no good or whatever, but just this change worked really well for wherever we were going and the direction we were going as a department.
Wow, that's a good one. I think they've all gone well. I really don't have memories of anything that seemed like a poor fit or somebody that didn't embrace their new role, or, we just haven't seen that. But we do try and meet with a new officer as quickly as we can to share with them, the details of our jobs. Because the idea that, everybody knows what I do. Well, no, they don't. Actually, very few people probably know what I do. And certainly that new officer has the right to be as, read in on what I do as anybody else. So we do try and, in the beginning, take time for all of us to get with that new officer and explain what it is we do and what we might really need from them. Here's the best way you can interact with this position, and here's how I can really make things easier for you.
Yeah.
A lot of that. We do a lot of that.
I wonder if there's also if there's any moments, because I haven't seen it personally because of my position where I am at. I don't get to explore and see a lot. But I wonder if there are moments where an officer had this one position with this job description, but the next guy, when it came in, it's split. Like the job was now two people, or the job used to be 2 people, now it's merged into one. I wonder if there's any examples of that working really well, you know?
I'm sure there is. Yeah, not off the top of my head of when it has. I mean, they did split the Territorial Youth Department into 2 separate departments because it used to be Territorial Youth and Candidates Department. And I think that split went well.
Yeah.
Because I think it gave it more focus for either side. For youth and candidates, they're very independent of each other. And so I think that went from, just in one department to 2 departments. And I think that went really well. And it was needed, particularly at the time. And it's still needed now. And that move that was done, I don't know, 16, 17, 18 years ago, somewhere around there. And so that went really well.
Yeah. I'm kind of fascinated because there's no way to say like a position being merged is good or bad. Like it seems to be like it's a tool, a splitter.
Right.
Yeah, I think as long as obviously the need is strong, and then you're going to get it. I was thinking like kind of going back a little bit of what not to do, and I think this is something a trap that employees fall into with officer moves is kind of like power plays when they know that there's going to be a transition. And so there becomes jockeying within departments because they might get a fresh start with someone else that they could maybe talk into getting them a better thing. And I think that's a very dangerous area. And it's probably an area that no one will talk about because they're afraid to might expose some of their own cards. But that happens. I think that's fairly common of when a department or a corps or anyone knows that they're getting someone new. All of a sudden it's like, all right, I've got my agenda.
Dwight Schrute comes out.
Yeah, exactly. That Dwight Schrute is a great example of like, no, I'm going to establish myself as, the alpha male or female.
Yeah.
And this is how it should be run.
Yeah.
Is usually how it is. There's always it should be this way.
Yeah. So glad you're here. You and I are going to fix everything. Here's, just listen to me. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's very dangerous.
I've never done that.
No.
No way.
I don't know if I've done it overtly. I've
probably
unconsciously done it. Yeah,
subconsciously kind of done that.
Kind of slide in a couple thoughts.
Like no one's ever wanted to listen to me before on this topic, but maybe you will.
Yeah, it's just dangerous, and I think if that's going on, or you feel like you're doing that, then that's probably a symptom of your culture is not very good in your department.
Or at least like reevaluate your motivation for that. Because it might be a good project and for whatever reason maybe did get overlooked. But I don't know. If your motivation is right, then I think that's something to be aware of. I think, I don't know, maybe like a marker, I guess, for seeing if an officer transition is going well is if they're doing something that they really love to do. So if they found some type of project, they've found some sort of little niche or focused area of something that they really, really love to do, and they've found that and they're doing it and it's bringing them a lot of joy and you can see that. I mean, to me, that's just like, that's the sign that transition, I think, is going well and they're like settling in and kind of figuring out their role within that team.
Yeah, and each one has a different sort of worldview and different sort of passion and different, right? And so all of those things, it's been over the years, all of the different, I think that I'm up to maybe like 14 different bosses, officers most of the time. And everybody adds something, and so now we have a whole sort of, smorgasbord of things that were added over the years by somebody because they had a passion for this or thought, hey, I've always wondered why we don't do more of this. And it just builds into something that's really been, it's better for every person who comes because they've added something new. They've had a project they've always wanted to roll out, or they've had a new way of trying, doing something that they've always wanted to do. So, it's been really, it's always added to our department.
I want to throw a question out there. What would you tell somebody listening to this, if you've been in a situation where it hasn't been a good move,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you just perceive it as not being a good move. Maybe it was. Maybe it doesn't matter. We all have perception.
Right.
What would you how would you advise somebody to go about dealing with that? Because we've all had at some point an experience where things didn't go our way, and it could be a move, or it could be something that maybe you really like the last officer, or whatever. There's that situation as an employee where things didn't work out the way you want. And I'm just kind of curious, what would we say to somebody who's going through that right now, who might be listening to this, or, how would we tell them to?
Ooh.
Well, there's kind of a lot to it, because you could just be in pure grief mode, and it has nothing to do with the person who's now appointed to your area.
It's not impersonal. Yeah.
No, you could just be really upset that your person is gone. And having to deal with that, and that's happened to me. Over the years, there's been different people that I was like, oh, I can't believe they're gone, and this is crazy, and dealing with it. But I think talking it through and still like constantly trying to see a bigger picture out of everything,
Sure.
and like Kathy was saying, that this new person may bring us into a whole different arena, or make it more colorful or whatever, and bring a lot of good things out of it, and try to kind of put yourself in that perspective. I think helps. I think it helps with the grief to kind of talk about it with other people as well, in a appropriate way, not in a like, I'm going to destroy the system.
Right. And I think
be
that's
mad at the system, because there hasn't been one like appointment where that they've been my boss where I was like, I can't believe this right from the beginning, and I maintained that thought all the way through.
Right.
Like there hasn't been one. There hasn't been one where I was
It's
like,
just the
at the end
change.
where I'm like, this has just been garbage. That's never happened.
It's never happened to me either, but there are some tears sometimes, truthfully, and the change. Sometimes the adjustment's hard, but I honestly, Abe, I just continue to remember that, hey, the Lord brought me here to serve the field. I sometimes serve the interests of THQ, obviously, but I'm really here to make the PR director's job easier in the field. I'm there to equip them, to mentor them, to do anything that they need me to do to make their job more successful and easier. And so if I'm always going to do that no matter who's here. But sometimes I will say the months of waiting for the new person and saying goodbye to the old person, and sometimes that transition is a little painful.
Yeah.
But I just try to remember what am I here for?
Right.
What am I here for? And I may have a little bit of fear because somebody is coming in and we hear that they are high energy or something, and I'm afraid, I'm a little bit afraid that I'm not going to be able to keep up or something. We just.
I think we run into like
happens.
a trap of. Kathy brings up a good point about seeing the bigger picture, like your job and your ministry, and I think where it runs afoul is when you have gotten yourself attached to the person, and rather than the ministry, and you've aligned yourself with the person and not with the ministry, and so when that person is going to leave your life, then you don't have anything else because you've been attached to the person and not to the kind of the whole of what you guys are trying to do. And I think that's where you see a lot of it just never going well, because you're losing a pure relationship rather than just kind of that. And then the new person will never be able to fill that void and all that kind of stuff. And that's why you see there's several employees in this territory that travel with their officer, and they will quit and go to the next corps with them and be part of that. And so I think that's where you see it, is where they've gotten this type of relationship. That. Yeah, it happens.
Really?
And it happens mostly in corps, obviously, but where they will travel with them.
Like the aide de camp.
Yeah, kind of. But
I'm not even sure what that means.
They have a very personal relationship, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But that's where it's
great.
hard to deal with when it goes awry.
Kind of on that note, I think sometimes, if I'm being honest, you are going to connect better with some officers than others. And I'm just thinking, I know we've got a lot of core merging and closing and some shifting around. And I mean, some people are even losing their core building, their home building, and even that's like
There's
traumatic.
Yeah,
everything.
A lot of really cool things. Yeah.
I remember when my core switched buildings because we built a new building, and like so many memories, everything, and that was hard. And you kind of lose that comfort or that security, I guess, that you have. But regardless, even if there's going to be probably officers that maybe your personalities you're just not going to click with as tightly as maybe other officers and stuff. I mean, that's just the nature of different personalities working together in the ministry, I think, in anything, in work and in life. But I think one thing that's important is try to find some common ground with that person. Don't just write them off because, this person said no to this idea or that idea or whatever. But try to find a personal connection with them somehow and try to at least build a relationship with them. I've seen it happen multiple times. I've experienced things like that myself. And I think that relationship is so key that you try to find some common ground and get on the same page about things. So then at least things aren't just completely crumbling and nothing's happening, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense.
Oh yeah, and especially if they come in with some ideas or their whole career they've been waiting for the opportunity to try this, and what a great opportunity to allow them to shine and be supportive of that, because I've seen that almost every time.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
And I'm always amazed, where you can have somebody come in that opened a Croc Center and now they're the CRD secretary, and you think, how is that person gonna adjust? And they're so experienced at it that they manage to, but they really have to rely on us to keep the continuity and fill in the blanks and to continue to do the support work, no matter what. And I'm always amazed at, how this is a brand new, you're totally doing a different job. It would be like me going to work in pharmaceutical sales. You know what I mean? It's like, what? I have to sell asthma drugs, or whatever. I don't know how to do that. It's totally different.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think that highlights the importance of the team, that the supportive team in there needs to be really dialed in together and understanding your role and what it is and how everyone functions to support that person coming in. Because I got to believe from the officer perspective, it's like, oh, geez, like, what am I getting myself into? Some are overwhelmed. Yep. Some are underwhelmed. And
I hope not. Yes, I guess.
Or they come in and they're like, oh, well, they may have thought that they were doing something else. And then they get assigned to the youth department and they're like, these clowns just goofing around all day. And then they realize,
writing on a piece of glass all day.
Yeah. Then they realize, oh no, they are just clowns. And
and I'm the what's the name of the person who's the head of the circus? That guy.
Ringmaster.
Ringmaster, yeah.
Wow.
See?
Congratulations.
Is it Hugh Jackman?
This is the greatest show.
Apparently.
Never seen the movie.
It's a good movie.
My kids just sing it. As employees, how should we approach the first 30 days of having a new boss?
This might sound a little being extra, I guess, but like I think some of it starts before those 30 days preparing for that boss. So it sounds really, really dumb, but most people witness this, so I'll say it. When we got a new TYS, when Major Bob came 2 years ago, it was really important to me. Sorry, like my voice. My throat is done. We're on our second podcast of the day, so my throat's going.
You say Major Bob. It creeps in.
We love Bob that much.
Yeah.
But when he came, it was important to me that he had all the things in his office that he could possibly need. So when he came into his new office, that he had a telephone, that he had pens to write with, that he had a calculator, that he had just those basic things that when he came in, he could see that he was welcome here. There was some thought put into him even being there. So I think it almost starts before those 30 days even.
I think so too. And maybe even, I don't know if you're supposed to do this, but sometimes we'll, copy new person, if we're really rolling something out or there's an interesting decision being made that we want them to be, we start letting them know, hey, just so you're not, just so you're up to speed a little bit on some of this, we're copying them on a few things as is permissible. We don't
Out of
want
the
to
loop.
We don't want to, but we want people to have some idea what they're getting into.
There's almost a kind of what you're saying, and I think that even what Kathy's saying, there's a level of service to it. There's a level of like being a servant or being, you're not a servant, but like being somebody that is willing to serve. It's a ministry, and that's what ministry is service, That's literally what the word means. And so there's a level of wanting to serve the new officer that comes in, regardless of who they are or whatever, the background. You as a ministry, your job is to minister. And I think, that creates a tighter group of people, and you also as a department, you just serving one another, as believers as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you were saying, I think there's a level of that and the humility of preparing your heart in a humble way. And Jim, you were saying it earlier too about like remembering your mission, like that's a good like kind of a way to set yourself up for a transition is like remembering, recalibrating your mind and what your mission is. And why you're there and doing what you're doing,
Yeah, and I think just finding an abundance of grace coming in. It's, we know what we're doing because we've been doing it for a long time. And that's not a statement of arrogance. It's just that we better know what we're doing.
Let's
Experience, yeah.
And sometimes because we're fluent in what we do, we assume easy like learning for other people.
It's called the curse of knowledge.
Yeah. And so you could just be like, oh, well, but going the extra mile to give extra information, even if it feels redundant, I think really helps out. In particular with special personalities, like not special personalities, certain personalities of like, I need information, I need this. And you might think, wow, that is just minutia at its finest. But that's helping that person and their personality really understand what you're doing. And so you have to kind of reset some of the language that you use that you were using with your previous boss. And I think so in those first moments of knowing that you have a new boss and going into that is recalibrating how you speak and the terms that you use. So that way they understand. I liken it to telling someone about the Salvation Army for the first time. Like you have to kind of be very, very basic for them to understand. It's not a very easy concept to understand. And so it might feel like sluggish and backwards. I think it speeds the learning curve up and it makes you move at a faster pace quicker, sooner.
I think a lot of times people, when within the first 30 days, I think it's important to meet with that officer and make sure that when you meet, you have a clear understanding of maybe what they expect of you as well. And that might take a couple meetings to sort of shape that. But I've seen this happen before. A new boss comes in and you meet with them and then you walk away kind of like, oh, wait, what am I supposed to do? Or something's changed, or a project or a direction or something's changed, and make sure that you initiate follow-up, I think, to make sure that you're clear on things. And also bear in mind that, you have your one area of responsibility that you have, but they're being asked for things from all different areas, particularly like a core officer. I mean, they're being asked things not just for youth, but from social services and from DHQ and from property and from all these different people. And so just remembering that, if you're not clear on an expectation for your role with your new officer, make sure that you continue to have follow-up conversations until you're clear on those things.
Yeah. And I think, and to add to that is, knowing that it's like a third party now looking at your stuff, walking in. And I think there's some really good stuff that could come from that. Is because you might see it a certain way, and in their perspective, they could have either like just came from an appointment that it would directly affect or whatever, that they may see it in a different light and question it. And rather than you feel like they're questioning you, they're seeing it with a fresh set of eyes. And I think that's a good thing. It's like you just got a new editing device that just kind of came in and said, hey, have you thought about this? And I think in my younger working days, I would have been like really offended. But now I'm like, okay, is this going to help?
Yeah, it's interesting because you're like, Kathy, you say you serve the field. And so when an officer from the move comes from the field, it's like they're down the pipeline of what you're trying to send down. And they have that perspective of like, hey, here's how it looks to us over here, you know, and that's valuable.
It's so valuable.
That's changed so many projects too.
Right.
Yeah.
When you go, oh yeah, you were the customer for this.
Right.
Oh yeah, I never saw that. And be like, oh.
It's market research. Like they brought you market research.
It is humbling.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is humbling when you get in there and they're like, yeah, I have no idea what this is. No, I don't know what this is either. Wow. Yeah, I'm not really familiar with this. I'm like, what have I been doing for the last 5 years? And so rather than be offended by that, there's a clear, there's a self-calibration that you got to be like, oh, geez, maybe I'm not.
This was changing the world.
Maybe I'm not the all-star I really thought I was.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Any other tips that you could share that helps make the transition easy?
Bring them a cat.
Bring them a cat?
Yeah.
Unless they're allergic.
Oh, yeah.
Abraham's allergic.
I had to bring that up. Sorry.
Oh,
they're cute.
People are, yeah.
But I can't.
No, sorry.
Yeah,
throw them a party.
Throw them a party.
Throw them a party, yeah.
No, I think what we really learned, we keep saying over and over again, is that just being sensitive and going out of your way to understand them and to understand your kind of own work culture too, and take a look at it and give some time to take a look at your own work style and performance and how you communicate. And I think those are all good things. And I think if we took those approaches, it'd make moves a lot easier for everybody, but it would just strengthen each department, exponentially, just because we're going through this kind of self-aware evaluation every few years.
Sure.
Like we're lucky in the youth department. Our course has been 5 years, and it was 2 years and 5 years, and like it's been some long ones. So
I think it's good to take that self-evaluation on a regular basis, because otherwise we get too comfortable and we can't even see if there's flaws sometimes and maybe something that we're doing.
Yeah. It's highlighted in an officer move, but it really should be done annually and to take a look at it. But being sensitive and going out of your way to make a transition as easy as possible. I did a thing a few years ago. I must have gotten it from somewhere else. I don't know if it was my idea or someone else's, but I went onto Google Maps, and when I got a new Corps officer, and I highlighted on Google Maps all the locations of the restaurants and points of interest in the city.
That's smart.
And like my favorite restaurants that they could use, and where the kids' school is and location. And you could pin all those on one map and then create a link and send it to them so they could see that, and so they could just kind of go off that. And they loved it. And the nice part is because it's at my Corps, none of those locations have changed. And so I could just keep using that same link when I get a new Corps officer.
That's great. Like here's a dry cleaner, here's a...
But we could do that even with our own bosses here at THQ, and and thinking about some of the things like lunchroom stuff, like insider knowledge.
Yeah, take a lot of napkins.
Yes,
you're going to need them.
I know. They don't
leave them on the table anymore.
No.
Yeah,
and salt and pepper, bring it from home. But does insider knowledge, because it's the new kid at school, and you want them to feel as comfortable as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Kathy, for
this is fun.
And thank you for rescuing cats.
Oh well, I like them.
If you're listening or have questions, or maybe need some advice on anything that we've talked about, reach out to us. You could send us a message on social media at Say Network, or email at saynetwork@gmail.com. Anything we've talked about in this episode will be linked in the show notes. Most really only Service Corps thing is going to be,
and maybe some rescue cat information.
I have photos.
We'll put that on there.
Cat videos
for sure.
Cat videos in there.
And don't forget to subscribe to the Say Network podcast on iTunes, and for updates on new episodes. Thanks for listening. We'll be back soon with another episode. Goodbye now.